Picture a sea on fire. Not burning ships, the water itself sheeted in flame, and men leaping into it to escape the heat, only to find the fire still clinging to them as they swim. For 400 years, one empire owned that nightmare. A weapon that burned on water. Water didn't stop it. Water spread it. And here's the part that gets me. They guarded the recipe so well that when the empire fell, the secret went with it. We never got it back. The Byzantines called it the liquid fire. Everyone else just called it Greek fire. It first shows up in the record around the year 678 in the hands of the Eastern Roman Navy. And it didn't behave like anything else on a medieval battlefield. Most fire you smother, sand, water, it dies. This did the opposite. It stuck to whatever it touched, wood, rope, skin, the surface of the sea, and it kept burning. Throwing water at it was, by every account, useless. They mounted bronze tubes called siphons on the prows of their warships. Under pressure, those siphons threw a jet of fire across the gap between hulls, a stream of flame that crossed open water and lit the enemy fleet before anyone could close the distance. Sit with what that does to a fight. You can't ram them. By the time you're near enough, your deck's already burning. You can't drift away because the fire is on the water too. The one thing that should save you, the sea, is on fire with you. I can't think of another medieval weapon that takes away every option at once. And this is where it stops being a clever trick and becomes the spine of an empire. In the late 600s, and again in 717, Arab fleets came for Constantinople, richest, best-walled capital in the world, the gateway between continents. Take it, and the whole map of the Mediterranean changes. Both times, the Byzantine navy met those fleets with fire. The Great Siege of 717 to 718 is the one to remember. An enormous force came by land and sea to finish the city off. They had the numbers. What they didn't have was an answer to the fire. Byzantine ships rode into the packed enemy fleet and burned it where it sat. That siege failed. The Arabs withdrew, broken by a brutal winter, a Bulgar attack on land, and ships they couldn't keep from burning. And the city held for another 700 years. Here's what I think that means. We talk about ideas and armies deciding history. This was chemistry. A liquid in a bronze tube kept Europe's eastern door shut. And the Byzantines knew exactly what they were holding. That's why what they did next makes such grim sense. They buried it. Most empires show their weapons off. The Byzantines went the other way. How to make the fire, how to mix it, the gear that sprayed it, treated as a secret of state. The kind of thing only a handful of people alive were ever allowed to know. By tradition, the knowledge sat with the imperial family and one trusted line of technicians, handed down quietly, generation to generation. Not written into common manuals, not shared with allies, not even fully explained to the men working the siphons. There's a story that an emperor, decades later, warned his own son in writing. If anyone ever asks you for the secret of the fire, refuse them. Say it came down from an angel, that it's forbidden to give away. Say anything, but never tell. And it worked. No enemy ever reliably reproduced it. They captured ships, they captured the equipment, and they still couldn't make the fire. Which tells you the trick was never the hardware. It was the recipe and the method, and those lived in people's heads. But a secret that good carries a bill. The fewer people who know a thing, the easier it is to lose completely. The Byzantines were about to find that out the hard way. Now this is where the myth usually takes over. You've heard it. The lost ancient superweapon, the impossible fire we're somehow too primitive to recreate. I want to push back on that hard, because it's lazy, and the truth is more interesting. Nothing magic happened. There was no single moment, no fire, no sacked library, no last keeper dying with the recipe on his lips. It was slower than that, and honestly, sadder. The empire shrank. It lost the ground that supplied the raw material. It lost wars, lost money, lost the navy that made the weapon matter. Over generations, Greek fire just shows up less and less. The men who knew how to prepare it stopped being replaced. The supply chain quietly came apart. And because almost no one had been allowed to learn it, there was no broad base of knowledge to fall back on. When the last people who actually knew were gone, the knowledge went with them. That's the real story. Not too clever to rebuild, guarded so tightly that the chain of people snapped, link by link, until no one was left holding it. So what was it really? Honest answer, we don't know for certain. Anyone who hands you the exact recipe is guessing. But I'll tell you where I come down. To me, the petroleum theory is the only one that really holds up. And here's the detail the rivals can't explain. The base was almost certainly petroleum, a light crude, what older sources called naphtha, probably shipped from around the Black Sea. Why am I that confident? Because petroleum is one of the few substances that genuinely does what the sources describe. It floats, it spreads, and it keeps burning on water. Every rival recipe still needs something that behaves like oil to make the water trick work. Petroleum already is that thing. Past the base, though, I'll hold my hands up. I'm guessing too. The leading additions are pine resin to thicken it and feed the flame, maybe sulfur, possibly quicklime. Heated, kept under pressure, lit as it leaves the siphon. But that's reconstruction, not a recovered formula. No one has definitively rebuilt Greek fire and matched every account. It's not magic, and it's not impossible. It's that the one document that would settle it was never written down for us to find. We tend to assume knowledge only moves one way, that once a thing is known, it stays known. I don't think that's true, and Greek fire is my proof. A technology that decided wars, held by the most powerful empire of its age, and it vanished. Not destroyed, guarded so carefully that there was almost no one left to remember it. The most dangerous thing you can do with knowledge is keep it to yourself. The Byzantines proved that. They held the fire so tightly that it slipped through their fingers, and ours, for good.